Hello, I'm Julia, and in this video I'm going to talk about some of the ideas behind my string quartet number 15. This one is basically a scherzo and trio, and it follows the expected structure of a scherzo and trio, so it's ternary form, starting off with the scherzo, which is in C sharp minor, and then moving to a trio in the relative major, D flat major, and then we return to the scherzo for the end. A lot of the scherzo is built on what we hear in this very fragmentary opening. And in this piece, I wanted to play around really with the parts echoing each other, answering each other, and then sort of starting to interrupt each other, gradually overlapping more and more until they all eventually come together. And this goes back to the idea of a conversation between the parts. That was something that I talked about a bit in relation to my quartet number 10. But this time I'm thinking of it a bit as though the four parts all start off in different rooms, or at least at a distance from one another, and they're all calling out to each other. But it takes a little while for each one to respond. And gradually, as the piece progresses, they get closer to each other and they start to interact a bit more, until eventually they're all mostly talking together, they're mostly in agreement. So we open with these quite dissonant fragments. It's not at all clear where we are harmonically, but they're very rhythmically precise, and that becomes very important as they start to overlap, which they do almost immediately from A. And then at B, there is this brief moment where they all seem to come together. But we're not really there yet. After a couple of bars, they fall slightly out of step again. Although now we've got 2 against 2, the violins stick together and the viola and cello are also playing together. And this leads us to a cadence at C, which is really the first point at which it becomes clear that we're in C sharp minor. And here we get an extended version of the semiquaver fragment from the opening, and this now expands into a more melodic line that keeps rising. And it becomes a canon. It starts in the cello, it's then taken up by the first violin, then the viola, and finally the second violin. And slowly, as the canon works its way through, the rhythms start to converge. So by D, everyone is playing mostly together. By the time we get to G, everyone's together, and that's how we end the scherzo. The trio moves us into D flat major, and it's basically just built on one chord, the tonic. So really it's an exercise in overlapping rhythms. It takes some of the rhythmic ideas from the scherzo and layers them all within this D flat major chord. The interest really comes from the fragments of melody that emerge from this texture, from the different layers that move in and out. So in a way, it's an expansion on the last part of the scherzo, but this time it's not a strict canon. And when we get to K, suddenly we move away from this D flat major chord and we take a sudden turn back towards the minor, and that's what takes us back into the scherzo for an exact repeat, just as you would expect in a normal scherzo and trio. So we go through the whole scherzo again, exactly as before, and that's how the piece ends.